Number 5, which is our Citizens Review Board. We want to introduce our new Executive Director for the CRB, Charmaine Mosley. And Charmaine is no stranger to this issue of citizens' review of police practices. She ran the program at the University of Albany in New York at the law school, where they had practices in place that really emphasized transparency and responsiveness to the community. She's been here on the ground in San Diego for a few months now, has done a lot of exploring and study and analysis, and brings to us some proposed changes to our Citizens Review Board and its process. And I want to welcome you, Charmaine. Thank you so much for all of your work and your concern about this very important issue. And the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Chair Emerald and Council Members Cole, Gloria, as well as Kate.
Can't hear you.
Do I have to start over again? I'm sorry about that.
No worries.
Thank you, Chair Emerald, Council Member Cole, Council Member Gloria, Council Member Kate, as well as staff. Thank you for having me here today. Before I give the update, I wanted to acknowledge Lisa Saucy. She's the chair of the CRB. She served several years on the board, and I wanted to acknowledge her because that's a huge commitment, you know, to this purpose. I wanted to also acknowledge Doug Case. He's in the back. Doug, can you stand up? He's the second vice chair of the CRB.
Yeah, he's got a leg brace on. He's got to conserve his energy.
Yes.
Good to see you, Doug.
And we also have Bill Beck, who's the first vice chair of the CRB here. So they're examples of individuals who actually are committed to the process and who, without them, we will not have a CRB. So thank you so much. Before I start off with my presentation, I want to give a brief background of the CRB, if I can get it to move forward. I'll just go to next. Like all citizen oversight boards, there's always a crisis that, you know, makes the board come to be. And back in the late 80s, it started off as a Citizens Advisory Board. And then in the 1988, Proposition G was voted into place, and it created the Citizens Review Board on Police Practices. This is a review model that does not have subpoena power. What is the CRB? CRB is an independent citizen police oversight board that reviews and evaluates the internal affairs investigation of a complaint. In addition to that, there are several committees that take place in, within the board. These committees are very, very busy with a whole amount of programs that they want to get started. The board has 23 volunteer members. They're selected by an interview committee, and the chair and the vice chair does not participate in the team's investigation of complaints. Also, there are up to 23 prospective members who are also appointed as well. And these appointed members, they cannot attend the closed session of the meetings unless they have cases that they're actually working on. They also receive a lot of training, but they do not vote on the cases. And they pretty much wait until there's a vacancy on the board that occurs. Okay? So the next slide is, what are the objectives of the CRB? The CRB was put into place to empower an independent citizen group to ensure that the complaints that's filed against members of the police department are fair, thorough, and complete. They're also put into place to recommend and advocate for policy changes, which is very important to this board because this gives the board an avenue to work closely with the department and see if there's any deficiencies within the standard operating procedure. So that, objective of advocating for policy is very, very important. They also operate transparency and are able to keep the community informed. We have community outreach committee who actually goes out into the community and updates the community on what's happening with the board. And there's also recruitment and retention committee that goes out as well and tries to recruit members of the, to the CRB. What is the complaint review of the CRB? The CRB only reviews Category 1 complaints, which are serious complaints. Those complaints are slurs, discrimination, arrests, discrimination, and criminal conduct. They review Category 2 complaint allegations, which are procedural, courtesy, service complaints, and they also are able to review Category 2 complaints if they are tied to Category 1 complaints. The CRB is also responsible for reviewing investigations for officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, which are very important in, this time period. They have so many different responsibilities, responsible for the administration of discipline arising from those cases that have sustained findings, which is very important as well because they get a chance to evaluate those disciplines that the police department put into place for the officers. Operational improvements. Since I came here in February, I've been trying to fine-tune the board and clean up, things that I felt that, were necessary and making sure that the board was transparent. When I first came here, I asked, my executive assistant, how do you find out the number of CRB complaints? And she gave me like a spreadsheet that had 10 different, 10 different spreadsheets. So I was happy when PERF recommended the collaborative complaint tracking system, which is, we use SharePoint for that. And that's an example of it, this slide right here. We're able to work closely with the police department and track those CRB cases that came in, as well as, the status of those cases. So Denise Sandoval, who's the executive assistant, she's able to see, and I can tell in real time where these cases are and how many cases there are and which team these cases are assigned to. And the second one is the case tracking slide, which shows the board 7 teams and how many teams each board, how many cases each board are actually working on at the time. The teams do not work on one case at a time. They can have up to 10 cases to work on at a time. So it's very, very time-consuming, a very time-consuming process. Okay, the next slide is the complaint tracking reception slide, and that's all complaints that come into the CRB's office. Some of these cases turn into CRB complaints, some of them do not. But these are all of the, the papers that come into the CRB office. Operational improvements. When I first saw the complaint form, it was just a one-pager. I believe it was the second to the right. And it didn't have a lot of information on it. So what I did was I took Albany's complaint form and I took a lot of that information out of there, and I was able to work closely with Mike Giorgino. Thank you, Mike, for helping me. Put together like an explanation of the process so people are aware of what the CRB process entails. It also makes them feel comfortable a little bit when they read that first paragraph about intimidation. They might feel intimidated when filing a complaint. So we also included information in there to gather stats like, the person's gender expression, gender identity, as well as race and ethnicity. And there's a spot there on there for videos and photos, so we are aware of if that person submitted videos and photos as well. And the last page is just a signature page, which the original document did not have. It actually gives ownership to the person that's filing the complaint. some more operational improvements that I've made to the CRB is, the previous website was pretty much underutilized. And so what I did was I looked at it and tried to make it as, just to get more information out there to the community, just knowing that they'll come to the website, trying to get information on the CRB, and if they're interested in being on the board, that information is up there as well. So I've been looking at revising the website and made significant changes to it. The next item is the CRB retreats. Earlier this year, we had a retreat for the entire board as well as the prospective members, and it was a team building retreat, which I feel is very important in the work that they do and keeping them in line with their mission. I think it was an all-day retreat, which occurred on a Saturday. Thank you. All day. And it was good. They got a chance to learn of each other. So I think it was a very good retreat. We have another retreat coming up on September 29th at the Red Cross, and that's going to be a working retreat on case report and presentation. We're trying to fine-tune the board's presentation of cases as well as fine-tune their case reports. It's taking a lot of time right now, so we're trying to make sure that when a person files a complaint, that complaint has the necessary feedback within a timely manner. It's taking quite some time right now. The next item, which I'm going to lose my voice, so Lisa, do you want to talk about the administration of Office of
Sure.
Discipline?
Also, one of our important missions, one of the important responsibilities that the CRB has is to review administration of officer discipline. So whenever there is a sustained finding against a police officer, the police department is able to institute that discipline, and then that memo comes back to the board to make sure that that is in alignment with their discipline matrix that they have. And so we're able to review and evaluate the discipline and also indicate whether we're in agreement with that discipline or not. And then Charmaine is required to keep statistics on all of the votes that we have and report those out annually or semi-annually to the public as well.
Yes.
And that covers the last
Yes.
bullet point.
Thank you, Lisa. So that leads me into the semi-annual reports. Previously, the board was actually doing quarterly reports. So I'm going right back to the charter, what the charter is required, and that's to go back to semi-annual reports. So that's what I'm going to be doing. I'm near the end. I put it on hold so I can be here today. Most likely those stats from the officer discipline will be in that report. We are still compiling information from SharePoint, so I'm hoping to have it done before the end of this month. Long-range goals. Information accessibility is very important. Trying to get those complaint forms to different areas, trying to make sure those complaint forms are available within the police department, each division, as well as in the libraries and churches, throughout the city of San Diego. That's very important to me, as well as trying to find out how to get an online complaint filing system to make it easier for people to be able to file a complaint. It's very important, even with the smartphones right now, people are using these smartphones. So if we can get like that online complaint filing system on there, it would be so much, so much better for the board and for the community as well. San Francisco and Orange County has an online complaint filing system, so it's nothing that's new. So I'm going to be working towards that. Survey, I want to be able to get a survey so we can get complaint feedback from people who file complaints. That's very important to know how people feel in the community and if there's any improvements or anything that we might be able to use, to make the process any better. Social media, like I mentioned previously, social media is a tool that's being used right now and everybody is aware of it. We could be able to get that information about the meetings of the board and forums and vacancies on the board and be able to solicit people as well. So I think that's very important. I'm looking into that as well. The board is also reviewing its bylaws, to see if there's any revisions that should be made to the bylaws. So that the committee's looking at it. We just recently talked about it at the last meeting, the last Rules Committee meeting. So that should be something that's going to be coming up shortly. The complaint process is a long process. I'm going to be working closely with the CRB in trying to streamline the process and make sure that it's more efficient than it's currently operating. The next item I have on this slide is the collaboration on joint forums. I'm excited about this because I should be able to hopefully team up with one of the law schools that's here, meaning that I came from Albany Law School. I've been in touch with 2 individuals, one from, I think it's Cal Western, and the other one from Thomas Jefferson, who used to be the dean at Albany Law School. So I'm looking forward to that and meeting up with the BALSA presidents and being able to put some forums out there and get the information out there about the CRB and get that feedback from the community. So that's it for my presentation.
Thank you very, very much. There are a number of people who will be speaking from the public, and I know one question many of them have are about concerns that the CRB is not independent from internal affairs, and I know they're going to want a solution to that, and the issues of transparency. Would you like to respond to just that real quickly before we go to our public speakers?
Yes, I believe that the CRB is transparent here in the city of San Diego, just like it is in Albany, New York. The CRB is actually given the files, the complaint files from Internal Affairs, and they get, they go into a room, they get given the complaint files. They're responsible for going through that entire complaint file, and sometimes the hours can be like 15 to 20 hours a month. It's a lot of time. I believe that, even at the meetings, what I've seen is that, IA, they're at the meetings, but the board actually reviews these cases, and if they have any questions, they ask the chair if they can ask, Internal Affairs a question, and, so it's done that way. I believe that the board is operating independently.
Okay. Thank you very much. Let's go now to public speakers. Martha Sullivan is first, and you've got a number of people have ceded their time to you, and you have a... Okay, however you want to do it. So it's the 2 of you together. All righty. And you've got a PowerPoint? Is that correct? But ladies, don't go too far away because after they finish, I'm sure you'll want to respond to some of the comments that you hear. All righty.
Thank you.
All right, ladies, you've asked for 14 minutes. If you can bring it in a little shorter, that's great.
We're going to do the best we can.
Do everything we can to
My name is
accommodate.
Kate Yavandetti. I'm a member of Women Occupy San Diego as well as the National Lawyers Guild. And we have had the opportunity to meet with all 4 of the council members and staff in connection with our work and our proposals, connection with the Citizens Review Board, and we appreciate the opportunity to present today. We have also met with Ms. Mosley. We've met with Chief of Police Zimmerman. We've met with a number of other people and have talked about our proposals. And Ms. Mosley today speaks about transparency, collaboration, and accountability, and so do we. I believe that we actually have the same goals. We appreciate her work. We appreciate that she's just come on board in February and has a lot of work to do. But our proposals go to something much more fundamental. We believe that the Citizens Review Board can have no credibility with the community until it is completely independent and transparent, until the Citizens Review Board itself as investigators does their own investigation and does not work hand in hand with the police department. We feel that the proposals that we will present in a couple minutes are a win-win situation for everyone, for the community as well as the police department. When you build trust and you build credibility, that can only be good for everyone. President Obama recently talked about the importance of communities feeling confident they are being treated fairly. We've seen the reports from Ferguson and other communities about the same issue. Every report that comes out talks about the importance of independence and transparency and accountability. Our proposals have been referred to this committee, as you know. from the Charter Review Committee. We first went to the Charter Review Committee because, of course, the CRB is part of the charter, and we felt that our proposals would need to be part of the charter revision, and we are actually waiting to hear from the City Attorney's Office about their opinion about what, if anything, needs to be part of the charter review and what can be done administratively or through this committee or through other situations. We believe that it is now time for change. It is time for action. And we have some slides here that tell you about that. Over 25 years ago, the CRB was put into place, and frankly, it's just not working for the community. We think that it's important for the community to feel that the CRB is truly responsive to them. The PERF report that came out in 2015, of course, was only talked about internal issues with the CRB and the police department. So they didn't speak to our proposals of independent investigators. But what they did say, and it's very clear, is that failure to hold personnel accountable was a serious problem. We appreciate the fact that there's now a new tracking system that Ms. Mosley talked about, but again, that's only internal. That doesn't tell the complainant or the community what's going on. So we think that we certainly need a lot more than that. The grand jury report, everybody's aware of the grand jury report and the concerns about the CRB members being influenced and frankly intimidated by the presence of the police department and by working with the police department. Whether or not, I know Ms. Mosley feels that they're independent, the community doesn't feel that. And I just can't emphasize that enough. It's the fact and the perception is incredibly important for the community, and that's what the CRB is all about. It's for the community. The federal courts have disagreed with internal affairs in CRB, and we have a slide on that on several cases that have been found where the police officers have been cleared by internal affairs and by CRB and have definitely not been cleared by the courts. We know that Bonnie Dumanis has cleared a lot of police shootings recently, and we don't agree with that, and there are ongoing lawsuits. We know, for example, with the Occupy lawsuits from 2011, that 17 complaints were filed by occupiers. They were all not investigated. Nothing happened with CRB. And out of that, there were 3 lawsuits involving a number of people, all of which were settled by the city attorney as well as the sheriff's department. So obviously there was some liability there. CRB did nothing. Didn't even interview people. Didn't even tell people what was going on. We believe very strongly that now is the time for change. This is what everybody wants. This is what the community is talking about. We have a new executive director who is here and is able and is responsive to us and is able to do that. We believe that the city council is also interested in protecting the community as well as protecting the police department from many of the problems that have gone on. We know that there have been a lot of police shootings, been a lot of problems in San Diego. We don't want Ferguson here. We don't want Baltimore here. We want change. We know that that can happen, and we know that this will benefit everyone. I'm going to turn over the remainder of the presentation to Martha.
Okay, and at this...
I'm actually just going to stay here, and I'll flip my...
Thank you, Kate. By the way, we would ask that if you want to make a comment, put your slip in now, because we need to move on after this with our next issue. So go ahead, Martha.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to present our recommendations for reforming the Citizens Review Board once again to the City Council, as we did in June to the Charter Review Committee. And I'm just going to briefly set the stage. Our recommendations are centered on a good government proposal to have the city adopt the model for law enforcement review that the county has had since 1990. Around the same time as the city's Citizens Review Board was was enacted by the voters, the county's voters enacted the Law Enforcement Review Board for the county. The county's jurisdiction includes law enforcement for the unincorporated county plus 9 contract cities, the jails, the courts, and probation services. And for the county law enforcement review board, each supervisor appoints 2 board members, plus there's 1 appointment that rotates among the supervisors. So they have 11 members. As you can see from this chart, there's big differences between the county law enforcement review board and the cities. The biggest one is the county law enforcement review board is completely independent from law enforcement. It intakes the complaints, it tracks the complaints, it has independent investigators, it prepares its own reports, it's completely independent. It has subpoena power, it interviews the witnesses itself. It does not rely, only on the law enforcement that it's reviewing for its information. In our fact gathering and so forth over the last couple of years on this issue, we've found that we've been unable to find any budget information for the city Citizens Review Board. We do know that the county they budget about $600,000 each year for the 4 staff, which includes 2 independent investigators, their executive director who does some of their investigations, and an administrative staff. Plus they have operating expenses and they have 11 volunteer board members. On the city side, just recently a full-time executive director was restored. At the beginning of this year, there are 23 volunteer board members, and then they make use of the police department investigators and resources and so forth. But we don't know exactly what the budget is. Our recommendations have been endorsed by 15 civic and civil rights organizations in San Diego. You'll see from this list. ACLU of San Diego, the Black Student Justice Coalition, the National Lawyers Guild, the San Diego Black Agenda Project, the San Diego Urban League, our group Women Occupy San Diego among them. What we are recommending, again, is based on the County Law Enforcement Review Board model that was adopted by the voters in 1990 and has been in practice since then. We've had the opportunity to observe these 2 models in parallel for the last 25 years, and it's very clear to us and to many others that the county model with its independence is much more effective than the city's model, and it's time for consistency between the County of San Diego and the City of San Diego and use the same model. We recommend independent investigators and subpoena power, just as the County Law Enforcement Review Board does. We believe that the intake, tracking, review of all the complaints should be done by the city's review board rather than by the police department. We believe it's important in terms of perception that Kate just referred to, that the board be referred to as the community review board. We know that everybody who's affected by the police are not citizens. They're residents. They may or may not be documented, but Citizens Review Board does not reflect the people that are affected. We also recommend that the members of the Community Review Board be appointed by each one of the council members who represent the city. So there would be 2 members from each council district, and the mayor would appoint 1. This quote from the independent audit of the police department by the U.S. Department of Justice earlier this year really captures where we're at right now. The recovery process for the San Diego Police Department will take time and an ongoing commitment on the part of the city government, the police department, and the community. For San Diego PD, this commitment must involve leaders at all levels within the department to rebuild trust and partnerships with community members. Strong efforts must be taken to ensure transparency and responsiveness to community concerns and complaints. We believe that any institution that investigates itself has an obvious conflict of interest. The tools that we currently have to hold the police department accountable are not working, and the millions of dollars the city has agreed to pay in settlements for police misconduct are coming out of taxpayers' pockets, either directly in legal costs and court awards or indirectly in insurance costs. The San Diego Police Department has more than its share of bad apples. San Diegans have a right to do an effective and fair process for community review of San Diego Police Department action and decision-making. And in closing, we would like to observe and remind you of 3 men who lost their lives to police shootings this year. Fardoon Nahad was an Afghani refugee with a history of mental illness who was shot down in an alley not far from where I live. And currently, there's a lot of media coverage of the fact that the police officer did not turn his body camera on. The police chief is refusing to release the surveillance videotape that was taken of it. And there's now a lawsuit by the family. We have 2 other middle-aged men who similarly were shot down. And because of the lack of independent review, we really don't have a way of evaluating what really happened in those 2 situations.
All right, thank you so very much. You want to wrap it up?
This underscores the need for the city to adopt the county's independent law enforcement review board model. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. Now, thanks, Martha. You could take your seat now, I think. I think that at some point here, we're probably going to ask our police chief to come up and respond to questions from the committee. Because of the volume of comments, we're going to have 2 minutes per comment now going forward. Rafael Bautista, are you here, Rafael? Good to see you. Followed by Margaret, is it Kuchnia? Margaret? If you come over and be in the queue, ready to go. And then Deanna Polk after Margaret. And Deanna, if you'd come somewhere close to the lectern as well. Mr. Bautista, you have 2 minutes, sir. Thank you.
Yes, hello. My name is Rafael Bautista. I'm with the San Diego Socialist Campaign. Really quick, I actually had an incident with the police, and I submitted a complaint. I took about 6 months to get the process done. I had to walk into the police station to talk to Internal Affairs, and I got 2 decisions, one from Internal Affairs, one from the Community Review Board, and they're conflicting decisions. Although the decision from the Review Board says, and I quote, the CRB agreed with the Internal Affairs findings, and this is for both cases, 1 and 2, and one of them was for use of or abuse of use of force, and the other one was for going through my personal belongings without authorization. While one of the decisions was unfounded and the other one was exonerated, the conflict is that the other decision from the other agency both said exonerated. So on the use of force, on one side we had exonerated, on one side we had unfounded, and it turns out that it was a mistake. So I got a letter with the decisions that I cannot appeal because there's no transparency. I cannot obtain information as to what was used to come to the conclusion of what these letters say, and I don't even know who I appeal to. There's no appeal process. Where's the accountability? Where's the transparency? Where's the separation between Internal Affairs and Community Review Board or the Citizens Review Board? Why do we have a Citizens Review Board that rubber stamps what the Internal Affairs Office says? Why do we have such a large percentage of complaints that get dismissed with no appeal process? What's the point? Why do we have a Citizens Review Board that's only accountable to the mayor, who's only beholden to the police unions? That's conflict of interest. And that means that we have a mayor that is weak on his positions to protect the citizens, And if the council doesn't take action, that means that the council is also weak on their decisions to protect the citizens.
Thank you very much, and you might want to
Residents.
hang around because I'm sure members of the committee will be asking some of these questions that come up, okay? Margaret Kushnia, and then be followed by Deanna Polk. Ms. Kushnia, thank you very much. You have 2 minutes, ma'am.
Thank you. I want to thank the council members for having this meeting, and thank Charmaine for her report and for her work on the review board. I want to just reframe the questions for a moment. We have a lot of talk about independence, and I want to just point out how interdependent we all are. We are dependent, as in the public, on the police for our protection. However, the police are also dependent on us for information, for assistance, for support, and not unimportantly, for salary. We are supposed to be working together. That's the whole idea. Now, when there is a question of police wrongdoing, it's investigated by the Internal Affairs Division of the Police Department. I want to say that this is not an internal affair. It is a very external affair. When someone is shot by a police officer, not only is the police department concerned, the whole public, the entire nation at this point is concerned about police shootings. And if I was involved in a conflict and a problem, and someone wanted to arrest me, and I said, wait, I'm going to have some friends check on this, and we're going to talk it over, and then we'll get back to you. And you can even review our findings, but trust me, my friends are going to really investigate this. I'm sorry, that just doesn't entirely work for me. You know, I'm a nurse. I know what it's like to be a professional and have people looking over your shoulder. However, I had life and death in my hands, and so does every police person who has guns, tasers, all that stuff. They have that in their hands. That's not a simple matter of, oh, we'll look into it. It's very serious, so thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Polk, followed by Doug Case. So Doug, if you could kind of limp up here and, sorry, poor guy. Ms. Polk, you've got 2 minutes, ma'am. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. My name's Deanna Polk. I'm a registered nurse for about 20 years, public health credentialed, and I also obtained my Master's of Science in Homeland Security with a specialization in Science and Technology from San Diego State in 2009. So when I come up here and speak on this matter, I have grave concerns, and I've worked alongside with police officers for a very long time. However, when I've had personal incidents and it's seen the issues within our police department that need to be addressed and that we have no independent board of review, it gives me great concern. In October of 2011, I was assaulted in a road rage incident. I was the emergency preparedness coordinator for the Council of Community Clinics. I had about 100 clinics under my jurisdiction, getting them prepared for an interagency disaster exercise. I was at a stoplight. This young woman comes up, starts attacking my car. Apparently, I passed her on the freeway. My window was rolled down. I told her I'm calling the police. She punches me in the face. I get 911 as she's going beside me. They told me to pull over. I said, I'm going to my home, gave the address. They said, you'll have to call back. Long story short, this was during Occupy. And by the way, I was coming here to city council meetings during Occupy and being credentialed in Homeland Security's IS 800, which is Advanced Threat and Risk Assessment. I saw nothing either from a Homeland Security standpoint or a public health standpoint that warranted the paramilitary response that we had. And that response took away over 60 officers a day from patrols. It took me over 24 hours, over 10 phone calls. It took me waiting outside of Western Division till 8:30 at night. Well, I saw the paddy wagon come in from Occupy. I saw officers walking by. 4 hours I sat there crying, and no one came up to see, number one, what was the matter with me. Meanwhile, I'm doing my Homeland Security assessment going, boy, this place needs some target hardening. I stop an officer on Bacon. There's 3 incidents in 5 years.
Okay, thank you.
And if hospitals can have independent review, people such as our first responders and the police need to have an independent review too. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Doug Case, welcome, Doug. And if William Beck would be in the wings here, ready to go as well. Hi, Doug. 2 minutes, sir.
Okay, thank you. As indicated, my name is Doug Case. I have served on the CRB for 2 years, currently serve as the second vice chair, but speaking today not on behalf of the CRB, but on behalf of myself. There are a lot of different review models, oversight review models that are out there. I'd like to talk about some of the benefits of the current model. One is that the CRB reviews all complaints, not just those that come to the CRB. And so we get complaints, we review complaints that go directly to the police department as well. The internal affairs findings are not finalized until we've actually reviewed the case. And by review, I don't mean receiving a report, as has been indicated by some of the proponents of the program. But we listen to all the tapes, we watch all the videos, we go through the evidence. If we find that the investigation is incomplete, we can ask for additional questions to be asked, for additional witnesses to be interviewed. We can ask for additional findings. We often have dialogue with the internal affairs, and sometimes they're successful in getting them to change their findings, or they convince us otherwise, and so it's a very dynamic process. We have the opportunity to evaluate the administration of discipline, which is something the CLRB does not do. We frequently make recommendations for policy changes. We made several recommendations, most of which have been implemented by the department. I'm not sure that the proposal has been presented by the other folks is the most effective use of public funds, because you're going to basically be paying twice for investigators to investigate the very same incident. I do think we can make our process a little bit more transparent so that we are sharing more information than just statistics, but while still being consistent with the confidentiality laws that govern peace officers. With regard to the diversity of the board, I think geographical diversity is important, as other forms of diversity. I'm not convinced that having appointments made by city council members is the best way of doing that. But I would encourage the city council to be involved in helping to recruit people for the board. I was recruited by Marty Emerald, and would encourage other council members to be actively involved in recruiting members.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your service. William Beck, followed by David London. If Mr. London could be over here in the queue and ready to go. Hi, Mr. Beck. You've got
Hi,
2
how are you?
minutes, sir.
Thank
Good to see you.
My name is William Beck. I'm the first vice chair of the Citizens Review Board, and I'm again speaking on myself, not for the CRB. I had some notes, but I want to go off notes for a moment. Someone said that the CRB works under fear and intimidation. Let me tell you, point blank, we don't work under fear and we don't work under intimidation. We work independently, we work thoroughly, we work carefully to make sure that the citizen whose complaint is heard, understood, and that the police officer's point of view is also heard and understood. It's not easy to get 23 people to agree on anything. You have problems, I'm sure, with less than that here. We do not rubber stamp, as we've heard. We investigate. We listen. We read the case findings. We listen to the tapes of the actual complainants and the officers. I see my time is running out. I just want you to know that this particular model, like all models, can be improved somehow. But to totally change it like that, I don't think is the right way of going. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Next up, Mr. London, followed by Cheryl Rouser. Is Ms. Rouser here? Good. If you'll be in the queue and ready to go. Mr. London.
Good afternoon,
You get 2
Chairman
minutes.
Emerald, other members of the council and the committee. I'm not here to talk about Balboa Park. Fascinating. I had some long notes. I have 2 minutes. I think it really boils down to the county has a system that works, and the city has a system that has failed. And it's a structural failure. You don't have an independent committee with subpoena power. They can't independently conduct an investigation. Everything that goes to them goes through the filter of internal investigations of the police department. Now, in law school, we called that the fox keeping, peace in the chicken coop. That's the system you have. And it's inherently, structurally doomed to failure. there's no other probable result in the long term. City's been content with it. Well, some people in the city have been content with that system for 25 years. Real people who live not in La Jolla, but perhaps in Southeast San Diego, have not been so content. It's time for change. And I think the proposal given to you earlier is a great one. It has worked successfully in large geographic portions of this immediate area. There's no reason for the city to sit on its haunches and say, we're perfect, there's no need for change. You're not perfect, there's a big need for change. This council's track history on accountability, oversight, and management is awful. I wouldn't even give you a D-, okay? One need only look at Balboa Park for an example. The string of lawsuits brought against the San Diego Police Department for sexual assaults by officers in uniform, and senior management heads have not rolled. It's as if nothing's wrong. Well, it's incredibly wrong, and you need to do something about it. You need to do something about it now.
Thank you, sir. Okay, thank you very much. It's just, we've got to keep moving here. Ms. Rouser, followed by Valerie Sanfilippo. Where's Valerie Sanfilippo? If you're here, please be ready to walk up to the lectern as soon as Ms. Rouser is finished. And you have 2 minutes, ma'am.
First of all, thank you everybody for being here and listening to us. I've never had any problems with the police before. I've always admired and appreciated their work that they've done throughout our community. I grew up in Southeast San Diego. I worked really hard to get out. Unfortunately, because of the situation we're living in Southeast San Diego, I never had a problem with the San Diego police until my son passed away. About a month after he passed away, not only was I treated, in my opinion, with disrespect from the officers in which I had questions, there was a certain incident in my neighborhood where an autistic child got out. The care provider was obviously in some type of a medical situation that he couldn't help or chase this child. When I contacted the police because he ran out in front of my car and snatched off my windshield, the police arrived, and when I began to express my concerns about this child being autistic, dehydrated, lethargic, and whatnot, and I asked the police officer to please take into consideration this child was a special needs child, and please don't hurt him, is what I said. The police turned his camera off and then began to reprimand me, saying that I had no right to tell him how to do his job and, so on and so forth. But I can't understand why he turned off his camera to say what he needed to say to me. In regards to my son, I feel as if I have more information now that I've come to this meeting, and I understand the process in the investigation, and I hope and pray that something positive will come out of the investigation. I realize that my son will never come home to me. Is that my 2-minute mark?
Believe it
Okay.
or not, I know.
Thanks for my 2 minutes.
Hey, thank you so much for being here. Valerie Sanfilippo. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. And you have 2 minutes as well.
Hello, Safety Committee. I'm Valerie Sanfilippo. I'm County State retired. I was a victim of police excess force right here in City Hall. I became sick with hallucinations and delusions from a certain bioidentical drug, and I spoke out of turn. I was given permission to speak again, but when I came up to speak again, I was asked to leave. I was peacefully leaving, and the police was told to leave City Hall, but then City Council said for the police to remove me. So the police grabbed me from behind, blindly, dragged me backwards, took me in the hall, crushed my legs to the floor, and to this day, I have pain every day in my legs. I cannot do my activities probably for the rest of my life. No charges were brought. I complained to Internal Affairs. I complained to the Civilian Review Board. They referred me to Internal Affairs. The police sequestered the witnesses. The Civilian Review Board needs to make public those witnesses' statements that volunteered for me. The city TV erased the tape. The Civilian Reward Board needs to get the tapes public. The police had cameras. The Civilian Review Board needs to make the cameras public. I went to small claims court. The judge went off the police report. The police reports are full of lies. If the Civilian Review Board are going off police report, they're going off lies. The police actually said I hit my face on the wall on purpose. The Civilian Review Board, I hear, caters to the police, and the police cater them, literally. You're only allowed to speak about the process. They never interviewed me. They take no evidence. They show no evidence, so I don't know how they do their investigations. I think basically they're just waiting. You just have to have $10,000 to go to court, and that's what they go off. Thank you.
Thank
so
you
I
very
believe
much.
the Civilian Review Board should be elected.
Oh, okay, thank you so very much. Dennis Dawson, where are you, Dennis? And Dennis has time seated from Thomas Gayton. So, Mr. Dawson, you've got up to 4 minutes.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I am president of the Earl B. Gilliam Bar Association. We are lawyers, law professors, law students, and we have judges in our organization as well. The members of our bar association asked me to independently speak in favor of independent investigations by CRB and in favor of impartial investigations. Starting with the first point, subpoena power is absolutely necessary. The description of the CRB says that it's an independent citizen police oversight board that reviews and evaluates the internal affairs investigation of a complaint. With a subpoena power, you will get to facts that are not necessarily included in the internal affairs investigation of the complaint. So you have to have a subpoena power to give an independent investigation of all of the facts, not just those that are in the internal affairs investigation. Secondly, the perception is that in the African American community, the perception is that the CRB has no real teeth, that it is a toothless tiger. And what we really need is an organization, a CRB, that not just makes, with all due respect to the chief, a recommendation to the chief, but that acts independently and can make an independent decision which can be enforced even if the police department disagrees with it. Also, if the committee people would go to YouTube and look at a video posted by Jude Litzenberger, Litzenburger, who is an attorney and is a former member of the CRB, you will see that she expresses fear and intimidation as a result of taking objective evaluation of the facts that were presented to her. I think it's very important that we have a situation where people are not fearful and they're not intimidated when they're dealing with these types of reviews of police conduct. I also think that just from an economic standpoint, the city would be well advised to stop paying millions of dollars in compensation to victims, in compensation to lawyers, in litigation costs, and in increased insurance costs. It makes a lot of economic sense for the council to engage in systematic and systemic change so that we really truly have an independent CRB. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And our final speaker, thank you very much. Our final speaker, the Reverend Shane Harris. And Mr. Harris, you have 2 minutes, sir.
Yes,
Bring it
ma'am.
home.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for holding this meeting. We have been working, I'm Pastor Shane Harris, president of National Action Network. We have been working nationally. All the speaking has been done. All the complaint is there. We've been working nationally with Reverend Al Sharpton to develop infrastructure nationally for review boards like this and for accountability for policing. So I don't need to go into full detail. I'm just here to say that I'm in support of what's being presented to you today. Ms. Mosley has been on our radio show, and we've talked about things concerning some of these things. So this is no attack on Ms. Mosley. She continues to work diligent. She just got here, y'all, in February, and so we want to stand with her in developing an infrastructure that is going to be more transparent, more clear for those in the community and the citizens that we serve. So National Action Network is going to stand with the complaints here. We're going to stand and we're going to make sure that we continue to challenge that this transparency come forth. We've got many members who are concerned in our network, many members who are concerned across the community. And so, of course, you know, Reverend Al Sharpton continues to be a concern to the government in this sense of watching the policing. So we do this nationally. We're doing it here locally. We are asking for more transparency on our Citizens Review Board and that there be an independence for the review board so that the review board can be fully community orientated and not half in the boat and half out of the boat. So I want to thank you so much, and let's get this popping.
Thank you so much. And there was a speaker slip turned in by Catherine Mendonça. Originally said that you were ceding time, but go ahead. You'll have 2 minutes, ma'am, and this will be our final speaker on this issue.
Final speaker. I want to make sure that you can see this. This name means a lot. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I can't I can't thank Women Occupy enough for all of the work that they put into. They basically did the work for everyone. They laid out a plan that has been they actually did the analysis, they did the investigations themselves, dating all the way back from Occupy. This is important. We're the community. And we have laid out, Women Occupy have started, they established, they're the catalyst for this. They have laid out a plan that, which we want as community members, as taxpayers, as citizens, non-citizens alike. This is important. We don't have to reinvent wheels. The CLRB has the system that we have presented to you that we want. From what I'm a concerned community member. I'm an advocate. Many different stories. Victor Ortega being one of them. Perfect story about he was gunned down. There was a complaint. The DA ruled it as justified, and a judge, Judge Burns, ruled there were inconsistencies with the police officer's story. Now, if a DA can rule a shooting as justified and a judge can find inconsistencies, that is a serious problem. I have every right to voice that. As protesters, we have every right to voice that. There's obviously no community trust, using that example. The video of Verdun, no consistency with Zimmerman's predecessor, Lansdowne, who said that we were able to get this footage. Now Zimmerman says no. There's no consistency with that. There's no transparency. I mean, what is the point of having these body cameras if we can't even have access to see it?
Thank you very much. Appreciate your time. Others who wanted to voice an opinion on this, I guess in favor of the reforms that have been proposed by Ms. Mosley or initiated by Ms. Mosley, Janelle Milner, Martin Eder, and Helen Bourne, all filing forms in favor but did not wish to speak. I want to offer our police chief an opportunity to comment and Ms. Mosley an opportunity to comment on some of the things you've heard, and then we'll turn to members of the committee for questions.
Sure, thank you very much. Shelley Zimmerman, Chief of Police. First of all, I want to thank Director Mosley for all the hard work that you do and your entire team, this Independent Citizens Review Board on Police Practices. I know the countless hours that you put in to do your work, and it's extremely important work, and I commend you for all of your actions. I also want to acknowledge that we welcome all feedback. To our police department, and that it's important that everybody understands that we follow the charter to a T regarding our Independent Citizens Review Board on Police Practices. We completely follow the charter. If changes are made to the charter, we'll follow all of those changes also. And so I appreciate the time to say a few words. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And then, if I may, before going to members of the committee, I wanted to call up Mike Giorgino from the City Attorney's Office. People here are asking for changes in the CRB. This CRB was created from a ballot measure, a citizens initiative. What would it take to make some of the reforms, create some of these reforms that they're asking for?
Chair Emerald, Deputy City Attorney Mike Giorgino, as you correctly point out, in November of 1988, the voters passed Proposition G, which authorized the city manager at the time, now it's the strong mayor, to create and establish the Citizens Review Board, and it also tasks the mayor now with the rules and regulations for the board. Minor changes could be made by the mayor, but significant changes, such as some of those which have been advocated by some of the speakers.
Subpoena power, so forth?
Such as subpoena power, would require a change to the city charter.
And that means it would have to go on the ballot?
That's correct.
And
it would have to go back to the voters.
All right, and be approved by what percentage of the vote?
Our office would advise on any specific on the specifics of a ballot measure, depending upon what was being proposed.
Okay, but would it be a 50% plus one vote, or is it 2/3? Do you know offhand? Okay, the city attorney will look into that.
We would review that based upon the nature of the proposal.
Okay, so let's understand here that while members of the council are listening and have concerns, and it's going to take a vote of the people to make some of the major changes that these folks here are asking for.
That is correct.
Okay. I appreciate that. Let's go now then to members of our committee. Ms. Cole is on the lights. Take it away.
Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate you bringing that out. So many issues have been raised. But first of all, I want to say welcome, Ms. Mosley. Thank you for taking on this huge task. It's been 25 years. You've been here since February. So, and I know you're working to make changes and improve the process. I know that. So I have a lot of issues. My first one, you know my concern for diversity on the board. And can you talk to us about what you're doing to make it more diverse? I heard that you're coming to some of my communities for recruitment. Is that correct?
Yes, it is. Matthew Gordon gave me a list and gave the committee a list of, community events that's going to be coming up, and I'm going to be attending those. We have perspectives on the board. The board has recently changed, so there's more diversity on the board.
Can you tell me what is the makeup of the board?
The racial makeup of the board?
Right, and even age.
Okay, age?
I mean, are there young, because a lot of people say there's a lot of older folks that, is there younger people below 30? Is it over 60? What's the makeup? Because sometimes they say, well, I'm working all the time because I'm a young person, so I can't get on the board. So talk to me about the makeup.
We have some individuals who are actually working full-time. Lisa is one of them. Maybe like over 30. I want to guess over 30. We've had 4 African-American females that's been on the board right now. They were prospective members. Can you speak more about the diversity of the board?
About the individual makers? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would say that we are definitely...
Please turn on your microphone. Thank you.
Apologize. That one's not working. I would say that we are working hard to become a more diverse board. We have spent a lot of time in many of the different communities in San Diego trying to recruit. Currently, we have 4 African Americans, I believe 1 Asian, a couple people from the LGBT community. We have single parents, working parents, retired people. There is diversity not only among race, but of type and age, and we can do a better job, always.
I appreciate that. The reason I bring that up, because I think someone also brought up that the Southeastern community wants more, people that look like, so we do have folk that look like me and you.
Yes.
On the board. Okay, thank you. And number two is, whatever we can do also to help you with recruitment efforts, just, always know that you can come to us. I want to also talk about your semi-annual reports. How will those reports be distributed? Are you going to come back to this body? Are you going to go to the full council? How do we know what's going on in your annual report?
Yes, I was talking to Marissa a couple of weeks ago, and the plan is to come back before the council with the semi-annual report.
Oh, fabulous, to this body,
Yes.
fabulous. Also, and before I get off the recruitment effort, I understand that there might be some people here that you might want to put on the board.
Okay.
Since we're talking about it, serve on the board.
Yes, we have 3
Just saying.
vacancies. 3 vacancies available, so if they can submit their resume and cover letter to me, I have my business cards. I'm more than willing to accept that. There's an interview committee which includes myself and the chair as well, and we're looking for a more diverse board, so feel free.
Thank you. Thank you for that. And what are the major differences? Again, state the major differences between the revised complaint forms and the older ones. Like you said, there's now race, ethnicity, or something on the newer forms, and it wasn't like that before.
I just have one copy. This was the previous.
See, and it was real light, so that's why we couldn't see. I mean,
Yes, this is the previous. I could pass it around, but
But what's on there different? Just the major things that's on there now that wasn't on there before.
Yes, the first page explains the whole process. This is the original complaint form.
Okay.
There's no explanation or anything on the form. We're also trying to capture, it says optional information, statistics, like the person's race, ethnicity, gender expression, those sort of things. And the person on the new one, they have to sign it. And it tells them, Internal Affairs will be contacting them for, questioning, to try to investigate the complaint, and they have to sign it and date it. This complaint form.
It's more user-friendly.
Yes, it's more
okay.
user-friendly.
Okay.
Yes.
Fabulous.
Yes.
And you talked also about the board members participating in a retreat. Did that retreat have anything like bias training conducted in that retreat, or is there?
The first one was team building because I'm the new executive director and coming into a board of 23. We want to try to make sure that they're focused on the mission of the board. So it was an all-day team building session and getting to know each other. The next one is going to be September 29th. The public is welcome to attend, and that's going to be regarding going over case reporting and case presentation. There's going to be many more because I'm open to meeting the needs of the board, training them, and making sure they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Fabulous. Also, there was a question, do you think that your board's hands are tied and that you're rubber stamping things? Do you think that?
I don't believe so.
You don't believe so?
I don't believe that the board is a rubber stamp board because the board actually goes into internal affairs. There's rooms for them to actually investigate the complaints, and they're given the entire case file. So there's no like internal affairs just saying, okay, this is the complaint, you have to rule this way. It's not like that. Last night there was a meeting. The board reviewed cases. One case took at least an hour to review. So I don't believe there is a rubber stamp board. There's questions that's asked, amongst the board members in the public meeting, so it's not a rubber stamp board.
Thank you.
I hear the same thing in Albany when I was in Albany, and it's a review model.
Okay.
And that's what the issue is. It's a review model.
Thank you, and I trust that answer. I trust that answer. One of my concerns is when this young man spoke, how did the conflict of outcomes happen with internal affairs versus the CRB, how did that happen, and is there an appeal process? There's no appeal process for this young man?
There is no appeal process, and looking at the letter, it could have been it looks like it's a clerical error. It's a clerical error.
It's a clerical error?
Yes.
And how are we going to fix that?
And we can fix it.
Okay.
Because, Albany has a different process as far as the letters that go out to complainants. I used to draft the letters, and I'll CC the police department, and they'll have those same letters, So
you're going to be contacting this young man? Is he still here? Okay, so someone's going to be contacting this young man?
Yes, I believe he called the office, and we explained that it was a clerical error. Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah, that we need to really make sure that there's no clerical errors.
Yes.
I know that there's a lot more, but I know that my colleagues have things to say, so please, I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you, Ms. Mosley, for being here. Thank you for taking on this. And I know it's going to get better, because we're going to work to make sure it gets better and more transparency, and that the public believes that this is a true and factual board, and that they're going to make changes. And I appreciate this report. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for those questions and comments. And I just want to repeat, one, that you have 3 openings as we speak on the Citizens Review Board. And anybody in this audience who wants to apply, contact our offices, go directly to Ms. Mosley, get on the board, and try to create the change internally, if that's important enough to you. Thank you very much. Next, we go to Mr. Gloria.
Thank you, Ms. Emerald, and thank you for the presentation, and thank you to the members of the public who are present, who also made, I think, an incredibly strong presentation. And, I sit here as someone who's really proud that this council, a little less than 2 years ago, restored the funding for Ms. Mosley's position, I think, out of, concern for the desire to maintain faith and trust with the community. That reduction a number of years ago was a needed action during a recession. We had a person who pulled double duty for a number of years trying to fill that gap. And I think that obviously with the restoration of this position, with the recruitment of someone who's incredibly experienced to do this work, now is the time to talk about what changes need to be made. I'm grateful for the efforts you've made to date. I would say, Ms. Mosley, though, the changes, while they're all, I think, appropriate, seem like they're nibbling around the edges of the concerns that I think the community has. And, I'm interested in knowing if the board has a point of view on some of the recommendations that I would characterize as being more substantive, if these were things that, as actually practitioners, are these tools that you could use or your board members could use, and don't be shy in speaking up yourself, that you don't currently have that would allow you to do a better job in this shared effort I think we have of making sure the public has trust and faith in our department?
Well, as the executive director, I have to work within the framework. So if the voters get out there and vote, and if there's a proposition that's put before the people, I have to work within that framework. I can pass it over to
I appreciate all the views from the public, absolutely, and we are very much committed to improvement all the way. Several years back when the grand jury report came out, we really took that as an opportunity to make some really positive changes in the organization, and Charmaine being here has just furthered that. I don't believe having subpoena power would change anything for us. I believe that we have access to everything we need. We are given an investigation. We have the opportunity to review that from our own perspective independently without oversight from the police department. We have access to body-worn camera video, Sallyport video, any evidence that the complainant would submit, videos, photos. We have access to medical records. We have access to anything that the police department had. There's nothing we would need in addition. And when we have reviewed cases and there have been questions from the board as to why didn't you ask this question or did you check here for video, we've gone back to the police department and they've complied with all of those requests. So we don't feel that having subpoena power would change much for us. And one of the things that we have that CLRB doesn't is the ability to affect policy change within the police department. There have been several changes over the last several years that the CRB has recommended and the police department has listened to and made positive changes in their policies. So I really believe that we have the tools we need to do a job. If anything, if there was a way for us to maybe make that process more transparent so that the public really knew how much time went into cases. I know Charmaine said, there was a case last night that took an hour. What she didn't say is prior to that case getting to the board, a team of 3 spent probably 40 to 60 hours reviewing and really looking at that case before bringing it to the board so that the board could discuss it for an hour. So I think if anything, we just need transparency about what really goes on and how much change we are actually affecting.
Mm-hmm. So, Ms. Mosley, in your thank you for that answer, by the way. In your slide presentation, you have a number of long-term objectives. At what point should this committee expect to see those implemented?
Information accessibility within.
You need to speak into the microphone, please. Make sure it's on. There we go.
Information accessibility, I would say within 2 months. Survey might take longer. I would have to do research for that and try to find out what's the best survey that we can use. Social media, maybe like 3 or 4 months. Bylaw changes, that's going to be done shortly, within the next month and a half. The complaint process might be a little bit longer because I need to be able to like talk to the CRB and figure out what's going to work for the board as well as, the department. So everything within the next 6 months.
Okay. Well, I would count on our chair to keep a close eye and have this back to the committee to see how those are implemented, and to the extent that they're having a positive or intended effect, or at least addressing some of the concerns in the community. Mr. Giorgino got to the point in response to our chairwoman's questioning about changes, because what I'm hearing in terms of the public testimony is a desire to hear change, and I'd say that that's beyond just in this room today. We've obviously heard this in other settings. There are a series of changes the mayor can do. There are changes that require a vote of the people. I'd ask, I guess, the mayor's representative if the mayor is recommending in each board.
Of course, diverse ideas and opinions are always bylaws.
I'm not sure I know what that means.
So we heard a lot of good comments and opinions today and recommendations. As the board goes forward and reviews its bylaws in the coming days, I believe, Charmaine, we're happy to give some of our recommendations to them to take into account.
Okay. So could that coincide with the implementation of these long-term goals? Is that a reasonable timeframe?
Correct.
Okay. And then lastly, and I guess as part of my, I recognize why this item is here today. It's a semi-annual report. This is kind of what happens. This is happening in a broader context in which these bigger concerns, more meatier issues are being raised. What is the Charter Review Committee doing? I don't serve on that committee, but if the mayor has a series of changes that are envisioned, you all have some, but there's a call for something broader, there's an opportunity next year to do that. Is there any, I don't know which of you serve on that committee, is there any desire, do you have any sense that the committee is going to make a recommendation or put something forward?
I'm sorry, 1 second.
Yeah.
She's saying, don't commit to anything. Don't make promises that I can't fulfill. They always have to do that because I say yes. I've forgotten how to say no. The Charter Review Committee, of course, people come before us and make a lot of recommendations. So far, there hasn't been a deep dive on this issue, but I recommend that people do attend the Charter Review Committees and repeat their concerns and any specific reforms you'd like to see. Okay, okay, come back, and we'll check, we'll check also with our council president who chairs the Charter Review Committee and see if she's got something docketed going forward. And if not, and you have enough of a concern to be part of a campaign to put something on the ballot, probably at this point, November of 2016, that would probably be, just in terms of if you want to go out and get signatures or get a consensus on the council on the reforms that we would like to put on the ballot, I think realistically that would be the soonest to do it, and you'd have a larger voter turnout then. So let's check with the president of the council. Let's see if she's got some plans to put that on. Certainly, I would ask her to go ahead and docket something going forward so that we can have a discussion about whether this is something we want to put on the ballot. And in that case, please show up. Also, if you don't mind my saying so, CRB meetings are open to the public, yes?
The fourth one,
Mhm.
I mean, not the fourth one,
Yeah.
there's 2 meetings every month. The, the second meeting every,
Second and fourth Tuesdays of the
Okay, second and fourth Tuesdays. They're open to the public.
no,
No.
the
The
second.
fourth Tuesday.
The fourth Tuesday is
I'm
open
still
to the
getting
public.
confused.
I know, it's the time zone change. But you'll put those dates and that information on your website
Yes,
so
it's
people
on
can
the
see when
website.
they can come and be part of the process. And again, if anybody here wants to be on the board, contact our offices and ask to have nominations forwarded to you.
Ms. Emerald, if I may.
Go ahead.
My sense is that nothing is happening in the Charter Committee. That doesn't mean nothing will, but nothing to date. I think the presentation by members of the public today is pretty well done. I don't know that I can support or endorse it, but I think that it's certainly a place to have a conversation at the committee if this is in fact what we want to do. And I don't serve on the committee, but it's you're indicating that the request will be forwarded to the council president for potential docketing there. I'm hesitant, and I appreciate the when trying to establish trust with the public, going in a circular fashion between committees doesn't necessarily achieve that. And so it's just something that I vocalize so that you know that I understand that, in hopes that somehow gives you confidence to stay involved in the process. Perhaps the last question I would ask is, to the extent any changes are made to the Community Review Board, are those required to go through a meet and confer with our impacted employee union?
That's certainly something we could look at in that context. I don't believe so offhand, but it's something we'd want to look at more closely.
So my gut is it probably does, and it probably should, frankly. But that also adds to timeline. And I would just say that I don't think we have anything to hide. I am embarrassed by the typo that's on that paperwork. I think when you're dealing with something, and I would agree, I mean, I'm just looking at it, they used a different term on a different page, but when it's you, it's really personal, right? And I get it. I absolutely get it. It's that kind of quality control that causes the whole thing to feel like maybe not everything's right here. But as the chief said, she's willing to live under whatever rules are established. That's what our jobs are. And if there's a desire to do this, particularly, I mean, the county isn't necessarily the progressive end of politics, right? If this is what they've had operating for some time now, I mean, it would seem to me at least worthy of discussion. So I would just say that it's probably in the interest of the city to engage on this, to lean in on it, as opposed to having it, imposed upon us, or in a situation where, a citizens initiative, as you're describing, probably wouldn't necessarily have the benefit of the expertise of our staff and of our volunteers, of our police department, of our officers, of the council. And it just seems to me that if we don't have to live under whatever rules, I think hopefully with this line of questioning, what we have is a series of steps that the board itself is going to take over the next 6 months, an expectation from the mayor's office for recommendations for changes within the next 6 months, the opportunity in the next calendar year to potentially have a measure. I mean, that seems to be the breadcrumb trail that I'd encourage folks who are passionate about this issue to follow. And I think it can start with making sure there's some quality control on the letters that go out. It seems like a minimum. I would also say that I'm familiar with another incident that was referenced in the public testimony that's absolute baloney, and what was stated by the member of the public is not true. But nevertheless, we have nothing to hide, so let that go through an open process where people can have confidence in it. There is no amount of money that is more valuable than the trust that our department gains in the community, or has with the community it polices. And so I think this is an endeavor that's worth trying.
Thank you very much for those comments. Mr. Cate.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And as a member of the Charter Review Committee, I appreciated the night meeting that we had and hearing the feedback from just me as a member of that committee, and I'm definitely not going to speak for Ms. Emerald, but in my opinion, I wanted to see what are possible policy changes that can be done internally prior to going to a ballot. And I think this opportunity to hear from Ms. Mosley a short time after she began is something that I asked for, I think, at my first public safety committee, that it was coming upon us to hear feedback from her and what her recommendations are moving forward and what are some of the changes that should be made. And I appreciate the list and the feedback that has been provided. And as a member of that committee, I would like to see where this goes first, doing internally, as Mr. Gloria said, hearing from those who are involved and closest to the committee about what changes could possibly be made internally, as opposed to putting that risk on the ballot, hoping it passes, having campaigns, things of that sort. So I think there is an opportunity to implement a lot of changes internally prior to going on the ballot, and we can see how it is in time potentially for a November ballot measure if that's the way we want to go. In terms of some of the questions I have, and as some of the comments were going, I was bringing up the county, since that was brought up a number of times, and seeing kind of what they're doing, what the reports are. Couple of just questions, and reading the bylaws currently that we have, in terms of the review processes that was brought up about what you can see, do you have the ability, and I think it's, if I'm reading it correctly, you do, the opportunity to speak to witnesses? Is that something you do or don't do? Okay, then maybe I'm reading this wrong then. Okay, so that's not, okay, perfect, okay. And then in terms of the data that's provided, I'm looking at the reports that are brought up by the city's annual or semi-annual reports. This is just kind of my feedback that take it or leave it, but in terms of comparing it with what the county does and what I think are some opportunities is diving deeper in the data and how it's presented, whether it's if you can do it by station, by month or whatnot. I like what you brought up, a lot of the policy changes you recommended to the extent that can be provided publicly about what you actually recommended and what is implemented. I think that will help a lot in terms of what is being done. And also as well too, while it looks, I mean, it kind of looks bad if you go to the website and you see annual reports and you see 2014 or 2009 is there, and then you go back, but you see we have semi-annual reports going to 2014. So, eventually maybe if the second semi-annual report is rolled up into an annual report and it's placed there so people can see that the annual report is there, is good. I had a question on the complaints that are provided, and I think, again, I want to make sure I heard it right. The CRB, you investigate all Category 1 complaints, even if the complaint was filed with the police department, correct?
Correct.
So you see everything no matter where it goes, and you review those processes? Okay. And also lastly, and this is, it's interesting to be in this position and determine kind of the policies of what moving forward in the midst of somebody new coming on and wanting to instigate change. And you mentioned the vacancies. This is something that we have communicated to members of the public after I had a number of meetings on this issue, and I'm continually open to have meetings moving forward on this. I've tried to meet with as many people as possible on this, but it has to do with serving and the process by which, and I appreciate kind of the process has been in place, whether it's a council designee or a mayoral designee, and the feedback and the working with the mayor's office on finding somebody. I mean, they look to us to find people, and it was mentioned earlier about Council President Pro Tem Emerald suggestions, and we've asked a number of people who have come to us on this issue and asked them if they'd be willing to serve on this committee. In my district particularly, with a high Asian influence, Asian population, we've gone out and asked people, and so I can't echo the sentiments of Council President Pro Tem Emerald enough, is that if you want the change from the inside, unfortunately, you have to be willing to put in the work and the hours to do it. And we practically beg people to serve on city committees. And so, my open call now is that if you have somebody, if you live in District 6 and you want to serve, or even outside District 6 and you want to serve, to contact my office. We'd be more than happy to work with you through the process to get this done, because at some times it's like pulling teeth to get people. There you go. So I appreciate the sentiments today. My hope is that there are the changes done sooner rather than later. Again, we're happy to work with you on kind of the data management side of it all, in terms of producing that in a more transparent manner to try to get that done. New websites coming online. Actually, that was going to be one of my questions. I apologize. Is working with performance analytics, or IT. We're supposed to get a new website as a city in January. I don't know if you haven't worked with them already or not, but work with them to figure out what's the best way from an online complaint system. I think that should be relatively simple and an easy way, easy fix to do that. So that'd be a recommendation to you on that. But I'm not sure when you want to docket this again, Ms. Emerald, but for the next update. But I'm looking forward to when those
Well, this will be
recommendations get
every
implemented.
6 months. We'll be hearing from you if it requires more often. That's fine too. So probably
Okay.
in March,
Okay.
February, March, something like
Perfect.
that.
I think it's perfect timing.
Is that what you'd be able to come back and offer some new information on the goals that you are working on?
Sure.
Okay.
Perfect.
Is that-
Thank you very much. Yeah,
You betcha.
absolutely.
I have a question for the chief. These forms that are being developed by the Citizens Review Board for complaints and so forth, will these be designed so that you can include information in the is it the EIIS system that you have to put together that was recommended by the PERF report?
All complaints are already, of an officer already included in the EIIS system.
Okay, but we need to expand that, correct?
Yes, when we are working on that to expand that.
Okay, so anything that comes through the Citizens Review Board would automatically come to?
It's currently automatically doing that, and we're looking at other factors that will go into EIIS.
Okay.
It's currently involved in that.
I think there was another question, I think from Ms. Cole, about the bias training, and so far I think your programs have been pretty good. Do you plan to have more bias training, public bias training workshops?
We do, and that's inside the San Diego Police Department for our community. We've had several of them, and we do have more planned, or we're looking on dates to have more of them. And they've been, we're talking with the community members that go to these. It's very important that they take the time to do that, to learn more about our police department. Like many of them said, you have all said, we have nothing to hide. And we want our community to see how we train our officers about non-bias-based policing, about procedural justice, emotional intelligence, and many other factors on how we train our police officers. And we encourage anyone to come to any of those.
Okay, and as you schedule them, we'll get the word out to the community as well. I've been to 2 of them, and I find them really helpful. The information is often new to me too, and gives me food for thought. So appreciate you doing that. Anything else you would like to add, either of you? Points you'd like to emphasize to close out your presentation?
No, I just wanted to thank everyone for having me here today and trust in, let's try to build this relationship. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, and thanks to members of the CRB for being here as well. And to the public, we appreciate this feedback, and I think that you have great ideas, and people are listening here at the city, and hopefully we'll see some of the reforms that will help the public feel that there is an independent process at work here in the city of San Diego. So thank you all, especially Women Occupy, for coming with your presentation. We'll go next to an update on our gang commission. We've got a 2-year plan, and this is also an information item. I'd like to welcome Reverend Ricky Laster and our current chair of the commission, Rosa Ana Lozada, who is going to be retiring after this presentation, I think. And we'll ask folks to please remain quiet as they exit the room so that we can begin this next presentation with the executive director of our gang commission and our chair, Rosa Ana Lozada. Again, if you could please leave the room quietly so that we can begin the next presentation. We do appreciate respecting our next group of speakers.
Good afternoon, Councilman, Council Lady. Emerald, Councilwoman Cole,